Hey everyone, Corey from Aquariumcoop in the new studio, new setup kind of going on. So if there's any problems, we'll work through it real quick. Um, but there's a lot of lighting kind of going on. The microphone's in a different spot, that type of thing. Ongoing evolution for sure. So tonight we're going to talk about oddball fish and what makes an oddball fish. I would say something that's not normal that you see in a pet store. Maybe it doesn't belong to a group. Someone asked if gobies were. I would say 5 years ago, definitely gobies were. Are they still now? Probably, but there's way more gobies now than there was even 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So a lot of I always struggle pronouncing this word, mormyrids, things like baby whales and elephant nose, those types of fish. Basically stuff that kind of senses, uses electrical currents in the water to kind of sense things, so they're kind of an oddball characteristic. But then I also consider things like leaf fish to be oddballs, and like water cows, and the more I start talking abba knives, I mean, they're like, that category is huge. So we'll just see where it takes us. I think people had a lot of fun with the puffer stream, and so someone suggested oddballs next, and I said, hey, why not? What else? So let's get some things started here. If you didn't see already, we did a video on food. You get 25% off. You put in that code. You've probably seen it though. For the live stream, in the podcast, really. I won't say most. A lot of you are watching this in the podcast also, and I recognize that. So tonight and tomorrow night and maybe part of Tuesday, all the sponge filters, anything with like sponge in the name, is 10% off on the website, as well as I think the Never Clog Air Stone. So there's that as well. And if you're not following us on Facebook or Twitter, I guess at this point, all weekend, New Life Spectrum has been 10% off as well. So yeah, let's see. So let's get started here. Does anyone have any specific questions about oddballs, or, I guess I need a jumping off point, right? Like, where do I go from here? Because I could go down the rabbit hole of, freshwater pipefish, and then everyone's like, well, we really want to learn about eels or, something else. So let's see. Yes, there'll be a video coming up about the tanks behind me. I finished filming it today. We're going to kind of go over, I want to hear your guys' opinions, what we should do with it, that type of thing. You can see here the tank behind me, the 75 gallon, is very dimly lit. That light is on. That's the one that comes with the tank. So we're going to have to do something about that, I think. Lots of okay, are we including eels? Yes, we are. You can ask eel questions. We'll talk about that. Not sure if you see this, but any ideas for big, peaceful plant and snail safe fish, 24 inches or larger? So I'm going to take this in the oddball realm, and it's because the first fish I thought of, and that would be a flagtail Prochilotus. Now, I know sometimes it's hard for people to decipher what I just said, but hopefully someone will put that in the chat for you and you can Google that. But it's basically, think of it like a tinfoil barb with like an Alice in Wonderland tail. It's striped and awesome. It's got these big goofy lips on the front of it that make it an algae eater. They have big appetites because they can get, chunky monkey status to them. And they'll hit, I don't know if they're going to hit, they can hit over 24 inches. The biggest ones I've seen are in the 20 to 22 inch range. I think it's mostly from a lack of feeding enough. The other thing that I'm going to put in the oddball category would be iridescent sharks, also known as, the Peruvian shark is different, but iridescent sharks, I'm trying to think of a scientific name. My brain just doesn't work. I've kept them before, but basically they're going to get over 2 feet long. In public aquariums, you can even see them at 4 feet long, but in your average aquarium, I see them 22 to 30 inches long term. They actually lose all their teeth as they become an adult, which is kind of weird, and they love to eat things like algae wafers. So when I had mine, big handfuls of algae wafers at a time, and they would just, it's almost like you just pour the bag into their mouths. And they're a big schooling fish, and they're super demanding in terms of space. But they get sold at a PetSmart for $5 or something, you know, because they're shark, right? But those are the ones I can think of right off the top of my head that are going to be plant safe, because a lot of big fish are just kind of brutal when it comes to plants, just the sheer size of them as they move. You know, even a fire eel, you're going to go, well, it's plant safe. Well, yeah, but, you know, they get as big around as my arm, 3 feet long, and as they're worming through stuff, it can definitely uproot some plants, so. Let's see. What about paradise fish? No one seems to talk about them. They're not necessarily an oddball. I mean, they kind of are in the fact that they're not widely kept anymore, but they're an anabantoid. They are one of the first tropical fish that were ever imported into the country ever. From the stories I read and heard about, they brought them over in the milk containers over on boats, and because they were an anabantoid, they could breathe from the surface and the water quality wouldn't do them in like all the other tropical fish. They also are relatively hardy. They're a cool water fish. They do well in much cooler waters than most other anabantoids. I don't know if it's fair to say most other, but a lot of other anabantoids. They're fun to breed outside, and when I see people wanting to get into them, they actually want males and females. And the problem is, I can order like 30 of them, and I'll get like maybe a couple females, because they just don't breed and raise a lot of them, because the males have all the color, females are a lot more muted. But, you know, there's a spike tail, there's the blues, there's the reds, there's the albinos. They're fun to do every once in a while. What people don't understand is they're like, I don't get it. This fish looks amazing. It's hardy. It's cold tolerant. It's got all these things going for it. It's still got an attitude on it, though. So it doesn't play well with other fish that well. But they're really fun to do outside, kind of like a breeding over the summer project and that type of thing. They really love to eat bugs. So hopefully that kind of, you know, not that I consider that to be that oddball of a fish, but it's definitely not a, you know, a commonly kept fish, I would say. Let's see. Lungfish, or one of my favorite oddball fish, says V6 Trop. They're unique for sure. You know, I've only, I guess, taken care of a few of them, and they were in like the 30-inch range, about this big around. They're wicked powerful. Like, they're just, I don't know, just one big muscle, and they have these little spindly, I don't know, I call them like feelers. They're technically like legs, I guess. But they're kind of a brown log. Anyone we ever sold at the store I used to work at would come back at some point with people just going, yeah, I'm bored. You know, I fed it fish and it did sting for a couple of years, but now I want to do something else because I don't play well with others. That's the problem, you know. And there's some, you know, there's some different variants of them. There's the Australian, and then I can't remember what the other one is off the top of my head, but they're mostly mottled brownish, maybe a little bit of black on them. Yeah, but they're cool looking. Like, that's definitely a fish that I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. You own it, so I don't have to own it. It's one of those types of things. You know, it's kind of like you love it when your buddy has a big truck when you have to move, and then you don't want to own a truck because then you have to help everyone move. That fish the same way for me, of like, glad you have it, so I don't have to have it. So. Let's see. Trying to find. How do I feel about archer fish? I love the true freshwater clouded archers that are coming out of Burma now. I haven't played a whole lot with the not saltwater, the brackish water ones, that type of thing. Mostly because I just don't like keeping brackish water. I mean, I've seen them in stores and I've watched people keep them, but they're super cool, and their behavior is they'll shoot down bugs. So my favorite setup is you keep like a half-filled tank, I guess, paludarium or vivarium, whatever you want to call it, and you get branches coming up out of the water, and then you put crickets onto the branches. Don't let them fall into the water because they just drown, but if they're on the branches, then the archers will shoot them down, and it's pretty cool because it's like a squirt gun goes off, and down comes the cricket, and then they eat it. So that's what's fun about them. A lot of them get fairly large though, and I feel like most people don't buy them in a big enough school. They are a schooling fish. They can be a little bit spendy, and you know, I find they tend to be an afterthought, which most brackish water fish are. The scats, monos, archers, even night gobies, night gobies, stuff like that. They're all kind of an afterthought of like, ooh, let me add that to my freshwater aquarium, as opposed to setting up a brackish water aquarium for them. So they just, you know, I would love to visit a store sometime that was brackish water only. I don't even know if one exists. I mean, obviously there's saltwater stores, there's freshwater stores, there's stores that carry some brackish, but I think it'd be amazing if there was like a brackish only store. I don't think I've ever seen it or heard of it, but it'd be cool. Let's see. Looking for more oddball questions. Lots of questions that aren't about oddballs. Gamer Guy says, Corey, is it possible to keep freshwater sponges? Or are they just too hard to keep alive in an aquarium? I've seen two different types of freshwater sponges now. Let me back that up 2 steps. Neither of which I can confirm are actual freshwater sponges because I don't have anything to compare them to, and I didn't have a microscope at the time, but I had one growing in my shop, and it could have been a fungus as well, but you can go into some of the older videos, you can see it, and it made these to me they looked like mushroom polyps from saltwater, but they would do that on the glass on the side of it, and it definitely was sponge-like. And then there was a recent one, and I might mute out the audio and show it in one of the viewer home shows. This guy's got this crazy thing growing. It's almost like what do they call them? The finger leather corals. It's insane, but it's normal, like freshwater fish swim around. He thought it was an algae, and my employees couldn't identify it. Then it got, emailed to me, and I go, wow, I've never seen that either. Super intriguing. I might email him and go, hey, can I get a little bit of that? I just want to see what this crazy thing is. So while not a fish, definitely oddball in freshwater. Someone says rope fish. I would classify them as an oddball. They're really good escape artists. That's the problem. Most people lose their rope fish like they lose their arowanas from jumping out. I see pictures of it all the time. In my opinion, they're a lot harder to treat. They don't do as well with meds, I find, and it's real hit or miss. They either come in great or they come in horrible, and for as much as we try, I feel like it's really hard to get them stable again. Like, if they come in bad, it's like 3 months of us struggling to get them healthy. If they come in good, no problems at all. But yeah. What is the best oddball fish for smaller tanks? I guess we got to quantify how small. The smallest one I can probably think of off the top of my head, well, I can think of 2, I guess, would be the Toothpick Fish. And I can't remember the scientific name off the top of my head. But they look like a toothpick, and they get about this big, and they're all like a baby pipefish. Kind of hard to feed. They mostly need live baby brine shrimp, or at least some cyclops, crustaceans in there. They're micro predators. And then the other one might be like a bumblebee goby, like a true freshwater species. Those are kind of fun in smaller tanks. Maybe you'd say like a scarlet batis, but they're pretty mainstream at this point. At least in our area, and I think in the hobby. So I don't think they're that oddball, I guess. Have I ever kept axolotls? I have. I've bred them. While they're not a fish, they're as much of a fish, I think, as rope fish are. So definitely I'd classify them as oddball. Some basic care if you're thinking about an axolotl. They want to stay cooler than normal. So under 70 degrees. Typically you don't keep them with much substrate because they will just they're a sensory feeder. So anything that moves by them, they're going to grab, and they'll grab mouthfuls of rocks and sand and stuff like that, and that can kind of impact them in their digestional tract. Carnivores, they come in a bunch of wicked cool colors now. They've been doing some of the GMO on them. I would keep them again if I could get a hold of maybe the purples or something weird like that, just from a, ooh, that's weird perspective. They're very easy pets so long as you research their actual care. Don't try to keep them with fish or anything like that. Typically it doesn't work out. That being said, you can put some fish in, like white clouds or something, knowing that they're kind of food, and they'll live there for a while till they get eaten. And if they were to start nipping at the gills of the axolotls, then for sure you'd have to like fix that because that's not a good thing. Also, to know about axolotls before I move on is they can regenerate limbs, and they've actually proven with science that's why they kind of exist in any mass number. They're extinct in the wild, is they're used in science all the time because they can regenerate their limbs, but also they've proven they can regenerate parts of their brain and things like that. So they're used in science all the time. Let's see. Can you tell me about ghost knives? I've always really wanted one since I was a kid. How many gallons they need, and who can they live with? So, I think it comes down to a couple life stages, I guess. You've got black ghost knives in a pet store, and they're going to be like this big, and you might keep them, and 5 years later, 7 years later, maybe they're like this big, right? Because they ate some, and they grew some. And I'd say those can do well, and maybe as like almost a solo specimen, or very few in a 29 gallon for that length of time, or maybe a 55. And then you get the ones that you see and they're like, boom, they're solid 2 feet because they've really been taken care of. Like, that's the main attraction of the aquarium. They're getting enough worms because they're mostly a carnivore, so enough meaty proteins, and they're getting fed when the lights are out because they're a nocturnal fish. And they're really being spoiled. That's when you'll see those big, beefy, meaty ones that are just amazing. And those need an aquarium. They're at least 2 feet front to back. So minimum is kind of like a 120 gallon. That's a 4 foot by 2 foot tank. You could obviously do custom tanks, 180, that type of thing. You can always go bigger, but those big ghost knives are pretty sweet, and you can get them hand trained so they'll eat out of your hand, and they'll come up and eat frozen and freeze-dried bloodworms and all that kind of stuff. But they don't really have a good defense mechanism, so it's real easy for them to get bullied by other big fish. And that's what you find is, for tank mates, you're either going to find they're going in with things like a clown knife or tinfoil barbs and all that kind of stuff that's going to be a more aggressive eater. Or I prefer to put them with other smaller stuff like maybe Congo tetras, butterflyfish, tenopoma leaf fish. I've kept them with clown loaches, but you find it's really hard to get them enough food because the clown loaches want that food so much. So you got to be selective in what you keep with them. Even sometimes the Congo tetras, just a pack feeding frenzy, not a lot might be getting down to them unless you're target feeding them. So yeah, I've referenced African butterfly fish in the topic, and people are asking about it, so I should address it. But basically, a butterfly fish, when you look at it, you might go, hey, that kind of looks like an arowana, but it's brown. It's got these big wings that kind of look like a butterfly. And it's in the bony tongue family, which that's how you describe arowanas and stuff. Basically, they have the big trap door where their whole jaw just opens up to swallow stuff. And that's what they do. They kind of sit there, do nothing until something swims by and they go, oh, watch this. Whoop, that's mine. Whether it's a bug, a tiny fish, something like that. They do well so long as they're not starved to death because they're shy, and I feel like the wholesalers and stuff, maybe they don't get fed enough. If they come in and they start eating, it's super duper easy. Like, here's krill, here's floating pellets, here's whatever you want. It works. If they come in and they're not eating, sometimes you just can't get them to eat. So if you do buy one, ask to see it eat first. I think that's really important. And really, any fish you're unsure about, ask to watch it eat, whether it's a stingray or a bichir or a puffer or just anything. If it's a tetra, it's pretty likely it's going to eat. But some of these oddball stuff, because they might not be kept in the water they want to be kept in, or maybe they got stressed out, it's always a good thing to see them eat. So Kenzie asks if I can talk about puffers, or dwarf puffers in particular. If you go back to last Sunday's live stream, we talked about dwarf puffers a lot in the puffer stream. Frogs. So obviously there's African dwarf frogs. I've got experience with those. Those are kind of easy. They like harder water, a little bit more moderate pH. Do well on bloodworms and other meaty foods. But because it's more of an oddball talk, I want to take it to what I almost bought a few weeks ago, and that was the Pipa Toads. The Suriname Pipa Toads, the ones that hatch out the fry out of their back that make you want to puke every time you see it on National Geographic. Yeah, those ones. I thought about getting some of those. They're real flat and gross looking, and they don't do a whole lot, but I've never kept them before. And there's a store near me that has kept them and bred them before. I thought that might be kind of cool, but then, I realized, like, or that's a terrible idea, because what am I going to do with, like, 100 Pipa Toads once it's happened, right? So, but they're cool. They're unique. It's definitely, they fall into that cool if you own them, so I don't have to own them category, I think. And I almost started pulling the trigger, because I think they're only going to be like $100 a piece, which you say only, but this is a pretty rare thing, I would say. And yeah, so that's for frogs. Those are the oddballs that I'm familiar with. Now you're going to say, like, what about cloud frogs? You're dodging them. Well, they're illegal in my state, and so I only had experience with them when I was very new to the hobby. I went and bought African dwarf frogs, right? Like, oh, why not? Turns out they were cloud frogs. They were eating my fish, and they were growing way fast. And once they got to like that big, I was like, wait a second, these are way bigger than they should be. And the store didn't know they had cloud frogs. They thought they just had African frogs. So, it's one of those things that didn't work out so well for me. But, they refunded my money because I was angry, They didn't cover the fish they'd eaten, but what are you going to do? Live and learn. Learned a lot there. What's a good oddball fish for a 15-gallon aquarium? I mean, pipefish do okay in 15 gallons of water. But whether you want to hatch out like live baby brine every day or not, that's kind of a brutal thing to do. What are some like actual like non-crazy intensive to take care of oddballs? Maybe something like Tanganyika oil cats, which I realize they're not like crazy oddball, but they're different. Or the I'm seeing half the scientific name. I just can't think of the common name. They're like the little wood cats. God, what are they called? They breed in little tubes. I've had them before. My brain does not work. I wonder if I can Google it real quick. But they're super cool. They're mostly nocturnal. Let me just type in wood catfish. It's not the wood catfish. It's slightly different than the wood catfish. It's not the Zamora either. God, why can't I think of it? My brain, I've just been doing too much work. Where are you? Is it? No, that looks like more wood catfish. But it's in the wood catfish species family. Anyway, there they are. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Let me find what the scientific name is, and then find the common name. Oh, this article. Come on. Not helping me here. It's like the worst. Oh, jeez. It's a whole article about catfish, and it's not gotten to the one picture I clicked on. Here it is. Talking about... So the wood cats used to be considered the brown catfish, large and nocturnal, generally dull and brown. Luckily, this myth has been eroded, and the popularity of the oil catfish is gathering pace. So, it is talking about the oil catfish, but that's not the one I'm talking about. I'm talking about, oh geez, Peruginae is the second word, and I can't even pronounce it. Give me a common name here. I don't know. I know of the Tanganyika oil cat, and they're calling this an oil cat, and I don't call it an oil cat. So now I just look bad on live stream. But those, I would play with those a bit in your 15-gallon. And then what else might I play with? There would be an oddball thing. Maybe like dwarf anchor catfish. A lot of catfish are kind of oddball-y. I'm trying to think of what else. There was something else I had thought of, but I got stuck in that article and ruined my mojo. Let's see. Any info on electric catfish? Most catfish, they're sold as electric catfish, are not the true electric catfish. The true, yeah, so Tatiana intermedia, I believe that's the catfish I'm talking about. That looks very familiar. Anyway, Most electric catfish aren't the true electric catfish. The true electric ones, I've seen them in stores twice. And both times it was you had to sign a waiver before you caught the fish because the store owner wouldn't. Because it did deliver enough of a jolt to actually do some damage. That being said, I don't really have any person experience that because I don't want to be around something like that. I'm not really trying to die via fish. And I feel like you'd end up feeding it predatory stuff most of the time, and it's just going to be one of those things that's type of fish I don't enjoy keeping. So I don't have a whole lot of in-person, mostly just seeing it in a store going, I don't know who actually wants that. They're pretty expensive for the true electric catfish. I want to say they were around the $400 mark because they were the actual ones, not just like, oh yeah, we're going to sell this as that. African mud skippers. I don't really have a lot of personal experience. Like, I've kept them at stores. They want to get up on a bank, so if you build them a sand bank or a bank out of sponge, they typically will eat anything up to the same size as themselves. So a lagging behind male will get eaten by a female sometimes. Most of them are going to be brackish, even though they're sold as freshwater. A lot of bloodworms, just carnivores. They're cool, but again, falls into that awesome that you keep them, so I don't have to. I can come and enjoy yours anytime I want. Yeah. Elephant nose. Have you ever seen them reach adulthood? How old is the oldest one you've seen? And have I seen them bred in captivity? I haven't seen them be bred in captivity. I'm sure they are now because you can get them pretty small, just like we're doing clown loach and stuff like that. They're probably using hormones to do it. The oldest one I ever saw that I can legit say like these people are being truthful is 19 years old. It was like this big, and you can actually see it in the Greater Seattle Aquarium Society. We did a project. I was involved in part of it called This Old Aquarium, and basically he had this tank for like 20 years, an acrylic tank, and it lived through just every disaster that hit that house. With lightning hit it one time and fried everything, killed most of the fish. It lived through it, and but that thing was just a beast. It was the biggest one I'd ever seen. Wild caught, in home, doesn't matter what it is. Biggest I'd ever seen in person for sure. Very, very cool fish, and just the fact they had it for 19 years and it was that big made it a really cool centerpiece fish for that aquarium. We built the whole aquarium around it, and it was pretty cool. I was jealous, I think. Let's see. So I'm looking up a baby whale. It's an elephant-nosed fish without an elephant nose for the most part. It's, sometimes they get called dolphins as well. I don't know how to explain them other than they use little electrical pulses to... It's really, they're using their lateral line. They have an enhanced lateral line that's much better than most other fish. And they're just a cool oddball fish. Everybody, like, when I have them in the store, people are like, what is that thing? And it's like, oh, it's pretty much a peaceful fish that's only going to get like this big, that hides all the time, that doesn't really have eyes, that is kind of gross. Which reminds me, doesn't have eyes. Reminded me back to the 15-gallon. I said, oh, I had another oddball. I might try a school of blind cave tetras. That being said, a 15 gallon's pretty small. You'd want to upgrade eventually. But yeah, blind cave tetras. And then another oddball fish, as I'll call it, not in a 15 gallon, maybe like the 55, Grace is asking. Maybe something like Exodon tetras. They got kind of big teeth to them. They're super active. They're almost like little piranhas, really. But those are kind of an oddball. Even though they're a tetra, I consider them to be an oddball. Let's see. Have I ever kept Chinese high-fin banded sharks? I have. I consider those to be kind of an oddball when kept in an aquarium for sure. They're much easier when they're kept cool water, and that's the hardest part in an aquarium is we don't keep them cold as they want to be. So I've got them out in my pond right now doing amazing, but every time I try to keep them long-term in an aquarium, it never does well. They basically stop eating and stuff like that, and I've seen people do it, don't get me wrong. I've also seen a ton of people fail, but I'm always jealous of the people that have them thriving indoors because they look cool. They get, stupid big. I mean, let's be real here. They're going to get huge, but as they're kind of in this goofy, like 1 foot to 2 foot range, they look awesome. And then as they hit 3 feet, they're like, that's just something weird. But yeah, I have some in the pond, the koi pond. So yeah. Let's see. Bichirs. How big of a tank would they need? Depends on the type of bichir. Something like a Senegal bichir can be probably as small, probably as a 29-gallon tank with maybe like a 55 or larger, definitely being better. But they kind of get as big around as a hot dog and maybe 8 to 10 inches. Really, you see them more at that 6 to 8 for most people. Carnivore for sure. Bottom dweller. They're kind of just a cool, fun fish. Whereas if you go to the other spectrum, you start getting to the ornates and larichis, stuff like that, they're going to get ridiculously big, right? And so, still carnivores and all those traits apply. A lot of times people lose them the same way. They hop out of the tank. And a lot of times when fish hop out of a tank, it's because they don't like the size of tank they're in. They're trying to get out. And so, more tank size is always better for a fish like that. What about Florida or American flagfish? Yeah, they're not common. I don't know if they're an oddball. They're good algae eaters. They're a killifish. A little bit aggressive to them. They're fun to collect in Florida. If I go there, I might collect some and breed them. That'd be fun to do. Yeah, I'm trying to think. But great hair algae eaters. They're just not always great with other fish. And then the other question was, any oddball shrimp out there? Maybe like the vampire or blue wood shrimp, which is, they're a filter feeder just like the Singapore shrimp or bamboo shrimp. Those are kind of cool. Some of the bigger grass shrimp, they're more like prawns where they have these really long, I call them like stupid arms, right? With these tiny little pinches on the end. Those are kind of fun. But yeah, they're in the prawn family. Let's see, what else we got? What are some cool catfish for a 10-gallon tank? And what is the best food for small Oscars? For a 10-gallon small catfish, they're oddballs. I'd say like dwarf anchor catfish. They're kind of fun. Do I have any other oddballs? Maybe like a red lizard catfish. Those are cool. Best small food for Oscars? Really, it's almost anything. I mean, I'm a big advocate of frozen and live foods, but if you're looking for like a pellet food, any top tier brand, New Life Spectrum, Northfin, Hikari, our brand, almost anything really. Like the differences between them won't make that big of a difference when you're growing that Oscar compared to like a frozen food or something like that. What about the kiwi? I don't know if I know that fish. Let me Google it real quick. Oh, it's just one of the haplosternums, so it's a haplocat. I just don't know it by that name. They're kind of fun. They get about, depending on the species, 4 to 8 inches, depending on which one you're going to keep. I like the flagtail ones, the flagtail porthole catfish, which is still in the haplo family. They've kind of got that white and black striped tail, which is cool. I've never spawned them, but the people that I have talked to that spawn them, they recreated the rain season. They actually used a sprayer on top to replicate rain, and that's how they got them to spawn over and over again. But they're fun. I do like those. I bring them in my store. They don't sell very well. Like every once in a while, I'll get someone that loves them. Like great, they load up on them, and then you get them where everyone's like, who wants that thing? And I think they're cool though. Let's see. Markrebs are pretty cool oddballs. So that's a self-cloning crayfish. Yeah, they're now illegal in a lot of places, including Washington. But they're a cloning crayfish, and that's why they're illegal. Is they're so invasive. They can tolerate so many wide conditions, and then when they have babies, they just clone themselves, so they're all genetically the same. And they make great pufferfish food. They're super duper easy to breed, and that's also why they're so invasive to most places. So if you are going to work with them and they're illegal in your state, be very careful with them, because just because they're not illegal doesn't mean you couldn't ruin an ecosystem with them. Banjo catfish. Man, talk about a bump on a log fish. They're cool looking, but when the light's on, you can like pick them up and they just hardly move at all. You just think they're dead all the time. I brought them in because people want a special order them to my store, and I always order a couple of extra, and it always leads to people asking, "Is that fish dead? Is that fish dead?" And then I have to like go in there, like, "No, it's not dead. Look at it. Like, look, see, it's kind of swimming. Like that's what it does. It's way more active when the lights are out. Not that it's super active even then, but they're cool. They're fun. At least looking at pictures of them. If you've never heard of a Banjo Catfish before, it's worth looking at. Let's see. What about perch? Like maybe climbing perch and stuff like that. I don't have a super ton amount of experience with it. For a while, it was all the rage, like on monsterfishkeepers.com, to have different rare variants of climbing perch. But I've never kept them personally, and even a store, I don't think we've ever kept them. The closest thing, and I say closest, quote unquote, would be like datnoids and stuff, which are kind of a cool oddball fish. Get really big long term. Used to be all the rage. Like if you had arowanas, peacock bass, datnoids, clown loaches, and stingrays, like you were the pinnacle of cool fish keeper. Now they're, I won't say it's like they're unpopular. They're just not considered the pinnacle anymore. They're still super cool fish. They can be real finicky going on hunger strikes and stuff like that. So I still want to keep a big group of them at some point. That's on the to-do list before I die. That's a good point, John Zim. He says, "Hey, Corey, don't forget to remind everyone that this will be on the awesome podcast later." It's true. John, which he's nice enough to donate his time for all of us, he basically, once this gets uploaded, he downloads it, he works on the audio a little bit, he uploads it to our podcast so that people can watch it while they're working out or driving to work, stuff like that. So a lot of people are doing that. And, I don't remember to promote that nearly enough like I should. You can just go to our website, and there's a little link that says podcast. You can click on it. You can get it both in like iTunes forms or Android form and all those things. Like if you're a podcaster, you already know about that. So let's see. Are cobalt blue neon gobies good algae eaters? I wouldn't say they're good algae eaters. They'll eat some. I think they're better biofilm eaters, which basically means like they look like they're eating algae, but they're not that good at it. Kind of like I feel like cherry shrimp, great biofilm eaters, not so good at actually eating the algae. I mean, eventually you put an army of 10,000 shrimp on one plant, they're going to get it clean, but not like an Amano shrimp where you put like 2 shrimp on that thing and they get it clean. So, yeah. Blue neon gobies, great, cool-looking, quirky fish, but not the best algae in my experience. Zach's Tank says, "My fire eel only eats earthworms. He does not eat bloodworms, clams, or anything. Expensive to buy earthworms in Sweden when it is in hard winter." Oof, yeah, that's a bad spot to be in. Could you get a culture of red worm wigglers going? I know we culture them over here in the States, and they're a worm that gets about that big. They're red. That's kind of the name, obviously. The other thing I would try is getting like some cocktail shrimp. It's very potent. See if he'll eat that. That's a good one we use on eels a lot of times to get them to eat their first meals. You could also try soaking it in like a garlic to try and entice it. The other things you can do, you can kind of get crafty and try, like, what if you cut up the worm, the earthworm, and you, like, stuff it into the shrimp, see if he'll eat it then. Like, sometimes you just got to really try a lot of things, because these oddball fish, there's always a reason, right? Like, why is something rare? Why is something odd? Well, it's kind of a pain. That's the problem. So, it could be difficult. Let's see. Would I recommend a Jack Dempsey cichlid with a rainbow shark? So the rainbow shark is what I consider an oddball fish, even though it's a cyprin. It's it's got its own group to live in, but it is the odd man out on a lot of tank styles. And I don't know if I recommend. I don't like to mix fish that can't handle the aggression. So like that Jack Dempsey cichlid, if it wants to attack that rainbow shark, the rainbow shark's got like no chance, right? I think a rainbow shark does well in 4-foot tanks or larger with other oddball stuff. So maybe you've got it with leaf fish. You've got it with, and I would say probably does better with like Tenopoma leaf fish, not the true African leaf fish. Bichirs, well, maybe just Senegals because the other ones probably get too big. Congo tetras, that type of thing. Like other stuff that's not necessarily aggressive, but does get large and can handle the quick movement, that type of stuff. Let's see. Could I keep a sawfish in a 20 long? If it's the sawfish I'm thinking of, no. Let me make sure, because I'm in my mind I'm thinking a paddlefish. But yeah, it's what I think of as a paddlefish. It's the freshwater version anyway. So nope, you're gonna need like a 20,000 gallon tank for that. Our Plecos oddballs back in the day, I wasn't even around that far back in the day. I don't know. I think they were just catfish, cleaner fish, kind of like they still are today. But, you know, I would love to talk to someone that's been in the hobby for 50 years and be like, what were Plecostomus, you know, new on the street? Like, what were these things, you know? Rainbow wolffish info? I mean, big aggressive log. So, you know, they're going to get big and they've got teeth and they want to eat stuff. Most people get them because they want to feed them live fish. They'll attack you in the tank. They usually bust glass tops and stuff like that. They don't really want to be in an aquarium. I haven't really kept any personally. I've watched stores sell them. I've watched people buy them and then regret it and then have a hard time finding them a home. But, you know, to each their own, right? Everyone, you know, everyone loves a certain type of fish. I'm just not into that fish, as you can tell with my description of it. And don't get me wrong, I can like a lot of stuff that I don't even like as long as I find that lots of other people have value in it. But most people I watch get that fish just don't enjoy it long term. Every once in a while you meet a rare guy that's like, yeah, check out my rainbow or you might just my wolffish collection. You're like, wow, okay, you're that guy. You're into that. Cool. Freshwater moray eels. Have I kept them and are they actually freshwater brackish? You know, there's a lot of debate about that. I would err on the side of I don't think there's any actual true freshwater species. I think it's mostly like most brackish water where they're going to live in freshwater for quite a while of time, but they would prefer brackish. So that's going to be my story. That being said, I haven't kept a ton of moray eels, and so I'm sure there's a lab out there that studies them that could answer that question better than I can. When am I going to set up the display tanks behind me? Fairly soon. I mean, I don't know the day like I'm putting water in them, but my goal is to figure out what we're doing with them, and then maybe I got to put substrate and that kind of stuff in first, then water. I mean, I would guess the next week or two. All depends. I mean, I got to go to the airport either later tonight or tomorrow morning, and there's always like stuff I got to do. So it's not like I just sit in this room, wait to, you know, come on and be the puppet. I got to do a lot of stuff too, and so, you know, I'll find time though. I mean, could be Tuesday, could be Thursday. I know the following week I got to set up a fish tank for my niece, and we're going to film that. It's her first fish tank, and, you know, so that'll be fun for me, but that takes a day, you know. It's her birthday, you know, so I've got to do that. Define oddball, I already kind of did earlier, but it's fish that don't really have like a place, right? So for instance, tetras are kind of community fish, and rasboras are kind of community fish. Then you've got kind of African cichlids. Then you've got Central and South American cichlids. And you've got flower horns. And you've got arowanas. And then you've got these other fish that maybe don't fit in those exact categories. So yeah, that's what I would say is those fit in this. So the stuff that's on the outside, we kind of gobble up and put them into this bigger group of, oh, that's an oddball fish. Usually it's something weird about it. Maybe the way you keep it. Maybe it's the way you feed it. Maybe it's a water condition that's weird. But yeah, I mean, back in the day, there was more oddball stuff. And now, even though we're talking about gobies, there's like a whole family of gobies that are known and talked about. Whereas a long time ago, not so much. You know, I think it was early 2000s, really, they were like, man, turns out there's a ton of freshwater gobies. And I would say some of the more oddball stuff that I would say like current day oddballs, like they've been finding, I believe, some freshwater blennies and stuff like that. Like that's super oddball, I think. Let's see. Yeah, all my mods keep texting me like I look blue. Well, I'm not really gonna like stop the stream and like, oh, sorry, I'm gonna fix the color amp because it's pretty much irrelevant actually. So, dragonfish, those are a brackish water fish. So they get long, they look cool, but they get sold as freshwater, unfortunately. Violet gobies, yeah, those things are kind of beastly. Yep. Let's see. Can I put 2 Oscars in a 60-gallon tank? It can technically be done, yeah. It all depends on temperament and water change schedule and all those kinds of things, but yeah. Let's see. What oddball fish are peaceful and can live in a community? So as long as we get some stipulations out of the way of every fish kind of will eat something that fits in its mouth, I would say knife fish, like a black ghost knife or maybe even transparent knives or glass knives. Then you've got stuff that's way more predatory that I don't recommend, like the thermometer knife and, clown knives and stuff like that. But as far as other peaceful fish, I like Tenopoma leaf fish. I love them with like clown loaches and stuff like that and other big fish that aren't aggressive. I like datnoids a lot. But these all end up being bigger communities, right? So like when I kind of did bigger fish, I had flagtail prochilus, I had datnoids, I had iridescent sharks, I had clown loaches, giraffe cats, Tarashukan Niger catfish, that type of thing. So yeah, I would say research the oddball you're interested in and then see, like, is this diet and this water structure and the stuff it's going to need and want going to cohabitate with what I've got going? Because today your lovable, black ghost knife that's this big might work out great with your neon tetras, but 2 years down the road, maybe there's a snack. So, you gotta, yeah, well, because you're going to get those people like, well, it worked out fine for me. And it's like, oh, it turns out they lost all their fish 4 months later to ick, and they didn't see that guy eventually got big enough to eat those or something, Water cow info, tank mates, typically none. They're just a big set of jaws. They like to bite stuff. The last one I saw in person, the person liked to kind of put their knuckle up above the water and they would jump out of the water and grab them. I mean, they're just a big aggressive brown cow for lack of a better term. That's kind of why you don't see them all the time, is it's in that group of, it was a good idea, but after 9 months of owning it, that's all it does, huh? Unless, you happen to be the connoisseur, which I haven't met one yet, but maybe there is the water cow connoisseur that can, tell you all the very fine differences and things like that. But, yeah, mostly I would say minimum 75-gallon tank, bare minimum. And that's, heavy water changes or a predator, typically going to be pretty messy as they eat. A lot of them, well, I say a lot, but I think all of them are going to be wild caught. So typically that's going to be live food. So you're going to have to scales and stuff. You're going to want to gravel back out. They're going to attack you, that type of thing. So yeah, perfect fish, right? Let's see here. Did I end up keeping the high-fin ghost knife? I didn't. We ended up selling it. I don't remember to who, but that's on the wouldn't mind keeping after a while. Would I consider rare pseudomogils like pseudomogil signifer oddballs? Not, well, the signifer I think is the brackish one, so he's kind of an oddball one, but not really, because they're easily placeable like, hey, it's a rainbow fish, I think, But, that being said, on the same token, flip it the other side, it's like, well, Curry, half the things you just talked about were also catfish. True, I get it. But maybe, maybe this definition changes a lot, I think. But, maybe it's because, like, catfish is, like, a huge group, and rainbow fish is, like, this big in comparison. So maybe that's why I feel that way. I don't know. Tire track eels, if I messed with them? Yeah, definitely. Will anything except bloodworms be a good diet? Yes, if you're only feeding bloodworms, that's a bad diet because you're eventually they're going to get deficiencies. So things like cocktail shrimp soaked in Vitachem and that kind of thing. What else could you feed them? I mean, maybe some of the like chopped up clams, but getting a hardcore carnivore diet, but varying it. That's the hard part. People, I'm going to say myself included, we get lazy, right? They're like, oh, this thing only wants to eat this. It's such a pain to go eat anything else. Well, yeah. That's the problem. I mean, ideally, you'd gut load like some baby guppies that you bred yourself, feed them spirulina and other good foods, and then feed those to the tire track eel. That's kind of how a lot of it would work in the wild. Or you would do it with shrimp and stuff like that, crustaceans. But we as hobbyists, we get lazy, right? Because it's like, oh, I've got 17 aquariums. I don't have time to do that. It's like, well, and that's where you see those show specimens where you're like, dang, how's it this big? How's it that healthy? Oh, you only had one aquarium, and you focused all your aquarium attention on that thing for the last 20 years. I get it. Let's see. Mud skippers are very personal. Mine let me hold them. That sounds awesome. I've never tried to be holding them, but that sounds fun. What do I think about gars? For the most part, I feel they're a little overhyped. They're cool. They look cool. They got a unique shape, but because they're so rigid, they need giant aquariums for the most part. I'm not like huge on them. I've watched other people keep them. It fell into the category of me of like, cool, seen it. I don't need to own one, but if that's your thing, sweet, they're fun. I find a lot of people get them because they're what are compatible with the fish they like. So maybe you're going to see bichirs in them and datnoids in them and stingrays in them and that type of thing. There's big fish that are kind of cool, that are prehistoric. They're one of the ancient fish, just like bichirs are and arowanas are. And they don't typically go and beat on stuff. So they get big but don't beat on stuff, still look kind of cool. But, I'm not into a lot of fish. Like, I'm not that into arowanas. I'm not into peacock bass. I'm not into gars much. I'm not into stingrays that much. And fortunately or unfortunately, depending on who you are, I'm really into live bearers. I love it. That's what, that's why I keep doing videos about them, because I keep ordering them, I don't keep ordering super crazy oddball stuff because I've already done it. Would Cracodon lateralis count? Maybe. I mean, it's a live bearer, but a lot of people don't, most people that see it in the store don't realize that goodeids are live bearers, and they're definitely more odd than a normal live bearer, because, for instance, the fry are born and they have an umbilical cord. That's kind of weird. The info for most of the goodeids would be cooler water. Don't let them get much above 72. Some species handle it okay, but a lot of them don't. Especially some of the more fragile ones, they start at 68 and they're going bananas. So cooler water, which the cooler water slows down their metabolism, so it makes it a much longer gestation period. And that's what people freak out about. They're going, it takes 60 to 90 days to get some babies. And when they do have babies, they're not having that many. As well, they're more developed in the fish, and they're going to be bigger when they come out, and they have umbilical cords, and it takes longer. So yeah, you might go, well, it took me 90 days and I got 4. And it's like, well, over the entire year, I got 9 out of this one female. So, and they can be a little bit ornery with each other, especially as temperature goes up. They don't like to be hot. So, yeah. I mean, that's how I lost some of my goodeids in my fish room. It got too hot in there in the summer. That's my belief anyway. I mean, I still have some, but I've got, 3 different types of goodeids in the fish room right now. But I lost my Scyphia francese. And then I lost some, 1 or 2 of the Cracodon lateralis, and I think it's because I accidentally put a top on it, and boom, it was enough to raise the temperature, and they're gone. Let's see. I just got a tiny South American lungfish, and he's refusing to eat. That's not a fun place to be in. That's why I hate that. I hate to be there the most, because it's like you've got something that's kind of rare and you just got it and it won't eat. The best thing I've got for you is patience. Try to get things that can live in the aquarium that it can eat. So what that means is I don't know how tiny it is. Like, I don't know if we're talking 3 inches or we're talking like crazy, stupid small. But maybe you get like some feeder white clouds and make sure they're healthy. Get those in there. Maybe you get some live blackworms in there. Stuff that can just live in the tank. And when he musters up the courage, he's going to go chomp. Because a lot of it is get that fish in, let it mellow out. It just traveled halfway across the world probably. It's been in 10 different people's aquariums before it landed on yours. Let it mellow out. Give it some dim light. Maybe get some tannins going in there. And then maybe get yourself some ghost shrimp or some cherry shrimp if you got them breeding around. Get stuff living in there. And then if he wants to eat, he's going to eat. But he could be so scared, or maybe he hasn't eaten in so long that his stomach's pinching and there's nothing he can do. But that's the way I treat most of that stuff that won't eat. Set up in an environment where he's got everything he could want to eat. Now give him time. And I find that's the best odds I have. Freshwater clams, yeah, they're kind of an oddball. Those along with mussels. They really are hard to feed because they're filter feeders, and they can go through green water pretty quick. That's why they get sold in koi ponds and stuff, is they'll clean out the green water. The problem is, what happens after they clean out the green water? Yeah, that's the problem, is they're a filter feeder. So you really have to be diligent about putting stuff into the water as a filter feeder. I suspect if we treated it like we were feeding a reef tank, where we use something like reef snow and that type of mentality for it, we could keep them going a lot better in aquariums. But we as freshwater hobbyists just typically don't go through that much effort. So let's see. How many endlers in a 5.5 gallon tank, and what gender ratio? Well, now I've already read the question. I guess I should answer it. I would say I always like 2 females to every male, and I'd probably do just a trio, so a male and 2 females. Let's see. What about Xiphosphoris multilineatus? I have to look it up because that's going to be a swordtail, but I don't recognize it from the scientific name. Let me take a quick look because I just want to make sure that I'm going to talk about the right. Oh, I guess I got to put Xiphosphoris in there. Why don't I really know this one? It's got to have a more common name. Oh, the pygmy swordtail, but I thought they changed it to Xiphosphoris pygmaeus. Maybe I'm wrong. They're kind of an oddball. I've got them sitting in my store right now. I can't give those things away, apparently. I had them in the fish room, and that's the thing, is it took me years and years and years to get them into this country, and then no one wanted them. And so it was the classic, like, why can't I find these? Oh, because anyone that ever got them and bred them found out no one else wanted them. What I will say is you almost never see that blue form. I've only ever seen the yellow form, so the yellow form they are calling Xiphosphoris pygmaeus. I've actually never seen the Xiphosphoris multilineatus in person. I've heard people having them, but they never were producing fry or selling them or something like that. And I've been on the quest for the sky blue pygmy Xiphosphoris or swordtail. So that's about as much information as I have on those guys, really. Bred them for a little bit, kind of cool, but not the blue form. I didn't get a hold of that one. How do you quarantine Daphne and blackworms? It's pretty rough because there's not really much you can do besides fasting them. So most people wouldn't quarantine them, I would say. We could probably open it up to some general questions at this point. We've been talking for about an hour, and I feel like we're getting towards the course of a lot of those oddball questions. We'll still take oddball questions. Am I still thinking about getting anableps? At some point, it's not going to be tomorrow or anything, but it's still a library I want to work with, yeah. Let's talk killifish sometime. Oof, I'm not going to say I'm like horrible with killifish, but get me in the room with any like hardcore killifish guy, and it's like they're speaking a different language because it's all scientific names and collection points. And because that's just the way that group of people runs, it's over my head when you're like, oh yeah, of course you had collection point 3942, that's a longitude and latitude, Cortez, because he collected them. And everyone knows like, oh yeah, that's the blue form. Whereas I'm going, yeah, oh, that killie, But I mean, I know how to spawn a lot of them and that type of thing, but only the ones I've ever kept. Whereas a lot of the killifish guys are just so into it and they know everything there is to know about it. I would love, like, if we're going to do that, let's get a killifish guy on here that can really answer some in-depth questions as opposed to me that, I could talk about lots of stuff I played with, but I've never played with, like, some of the bigger killies that are, over 6 inches or super predatory. I kind of want to, but it's in that, okay, I've done it, now I'm never going to do it again category, probably. Let's see. Did you order the red mosaic Dumbo ear guppies from Guppy Train? I did, yep. I also got the platinum as well. So I got the jumbo elephant ear and the normal ones and some other stuff. But those will be coming up in videos to come. But I do have, and you'll see it in a video. I think the video that I shot for this, I don't know. I don't know what videos are part of what anymore. But I got the best looking female guppies I've ever seen, ever, hands down, in my fish room right now. I'm absolutely amazed by them, blowing my mind. It's that fish that you come out and you check on it every 2 hours, going, dang, that's cool. That is so cool. And then like I keep checking on him, like, he's still doing okay? He's still doing okay? Because I really want to get that line going. Man, am I in love with that line. Anyway. Are cigar fish and freshwater lionfish considered oddballs to me? Yeah, I mean, the cigar fish probably are. I mean, I kind of lump them together more with pink-tailed Chelseas and stuff like that, or the Apollo sharks, in that realm, I guess. The freshwater lionfish, does not get thrown around as like the stonefish and stuff as well. Let me see. Let's see here. Freshwater lionfish. Yeah, I get it. I see it thrown around as the freshwater stonefish as well. I would consider them oddballs, yeah. Are pipefish really freshwater? My local fish store has them, and I'd love to have them, but I never hear much about them, so I feel like there must be a catch. The catch is you got to hatch out live baby brine every single day, or they're going to starve to death, and if you put them with any other fish, they'll be out competing for food and also starve to death. That's the catch. But there are saltwater, well, not obviously there's saltwater pipefish. There are brackish water versions, but there also is freshwater versions. So know that if you do get a true full freshwater species, they can be kept, they can be bred. I worked with a breeder, we did that, and they are cool, but they're so labor intensive. That's why you don't see them around. Like, I don't even want to bring them in the store. They're that labor intensive. Whatever happened? Did I find them around a Mountain Dew? Nope. I've got lots of Mountain Dew. I'd say maybe I'm halfway through it or something. I don't know, but there's a lot. Is there a true freshwater flounder, or are they all brackish water? I feel like there is a true freshwater flounder. I don't know if I've ever seen it. I've never taken the time to see if they went, if they were true freshwater, like kept them for months and months and months at a time. Because on any given day, I could probably order 15 different versions of flounder, all claiming to be freshwater. And so it's like, well, I know there's not that many. So speaking of that, fridge, I'm trying to drink more water. Now that I've made more room, because I've drank soda, I'm putting more water in, so I drink more water as opposed to just soda. Freshwater lionfish are a species of toadfish, actually. Call it what you want. Stonefish, toadfish, they all get sold in the trade is the same thing. What do I think about half-beaks? They seem like an oddball to me, but I don't know much about them. Yeah, I would classify them as kind of an oddball. Because they're predatory, I'd put them in the same oddball category as like Bellasonics. But they're also known as like the pike livebearer. They kind of have a pike body form to them. They prey on their own fry really hard, so you got to be really quick with the netting of them each day and get them out of that tank usually. Yeah. I like them. I've played with them a few times. They've always been too labor intensive for me to keep them going long term. At least the Celebes rainbows, or no, it's not Celebes rainbows, the Celebes half-beaks that I'm into. Have I ever had problems with the impeller cover of a Fluval 06 series popping out of its bay? It's okay for now, but after my last cleaning, my flow rate went through the floor, and that was the issue. I haven't had that problem really. It used to be in like the 04 series that impeller casing snapped all the time. That's why I didn't like Fluvalls for a long time. Is because working at a store, it was only a matter of time before someone walks in and goes, "I broke it," and it was, I think, designed not intentionally to fail, but the designing of it was bad, and it took them a long time to get it right. And now it seems to not be an issue anymore, which is a great thing. So they have improved upon it. Inglorious Bettas, who has a channel by the way, asked, "What is the best place to look for oddball fish?" Probably the wet spot tropical fish. You can also look on eBay, or not eBay, Aquabid, which they post there a lot. The problem is with oddball fish, a lot of times you're going to get stuff that's misidentified. Not specifically for them, I'm just saying, like, you know, there's websites that specialize in oddball fish. A lot of times they'll sell you a fish, they don't actually have it, they're going to try and get it, and there's a lot of rigmarole going through there, so I don't know if I have like a great source of like, oh yeah, here's the best besides the wet spot. I would say they are the best for oddball stuff. My figure 8 puffer is not eating snails. I only had him for 4 weeks. What should I do? Look at his teeth, make sure they're not overgrown, make sure he's in brackish water, make sure the environment's suitable. I remember talking with you before, and I think something was going on with that puffer. Like, was it sick or, the wrong environment? Something was going on. I just don't remember. What's the biggest female guppies I've ever seen? About 3 giants today that were being stored in a pet store turtle display. Tank surprised they survived as long as they did. They're exactly 2.5 inches. So 2.5 inches is about that. I've seen maybe a little bit bigger. I mean, it's hard to see longer ones, like maybe 3.5 inches, maybe. Like, that's a fisherman's tail, right? Without putting it on a ruler, I don't believe anything anyone says. But I have seen them where they're just really fat and big. And that's why when people say, like, "Corey, your guppy females are huge," and I go, "No, they're not even that big. I wasn't even trying to make them big." You can try and make, like, physically big guppies. You select for that trait. You feed them really well. You keep them in cooler water so they're not breeding. So they're using all of their energy for body growth as opposed to fry production. So there's some ways you can really skew that. But don't get me wrong, 2.5... and you're saying they're big? I'm sure they're pretty big, and I love big female guppies. They're awesome. Let's see. Found out my Colombian Tetras bred. Only one survived. Any tips on keeping more? With the rummy nose and bristle nose. Mostly, if you were to start feeding live baby brine shrimp like every day, and you offered a lot of cover, you'd probably raise up more. And so your next question is like, well, how many more? Well, I don't know, maybe you raise 12, but a lot of times when you're feeding the right foods, nature will take its course and just do it for you. So, let's see. If I buy something from your store like fish food, is there a shipping fee? Yep, there is. It's all, you just add to the cart, it'll calculate for you. If you spend over $100, we pay the shipping. But definitely, there's still shipping fees for us. Any good sites to buy live bears like guppies and platies? My go-to is Aquabid. I'm sure there's other good websites out there, but I'm looking for stuff that isn't super mainstream. Who's got platies and guppies? So for platies, I'd recommend Charles Clapsaddle, Goliad Farms. Guppies, I don't know if I could recommend. I mean, I guess Guppy Train, but he doesn't have a website. He's a Facebook group or a Facebook business. Any tips on planting Altananthera renekii mini tissue culture? I've never played with any of the tissue cultures of that, so I don't have any specific tips to that other than, a fine-tipped pair of tweezers and have your conditions right so that when it converts, it will convert. Personal question for Corey. Do you have any other hobbies besides aquariums? Any arts, music, drawing, painting? I'm pretty terrible at anything when it comes to painting or drawing. Like, I'm bad at it. And I think I've never really got into it. I know what I like to look at, but I don't know how to do it or something like that. So my other hobbies, I would say, are gaming And if I was to really identify that, anything super competitive. So I'll play, if you want to go play tennis tomorrow, we'll play. Realize you're going to play against a fat guy that can't run very fast, but has wicked, ball control and putting spins on stuff. I like that. I like pickleball. I like badminton. I like ping pong. Anything that's competitive. I'll play volleyball. I get suckered at anything, and then I'll play really hard. But then, I'll play I've been taking a break, so to speak, from work because my wife's worried I'm working too much, stuff like that. So I'll play a little bit of World of Warcraft, and so I think right now I have a level 18 hunter, so you can tell he's not playing that much. I try and take a break, and so maybe I'll okay, I'm gonna eat some food, and I'll just do something for a little bit, and then I look back usually, and it's there's Facebook with 15 questions to answer. And then, there's the emails. And I get back and I just start doing that. So, yeah. And then there's another hobby I want to pick up, but I just haven't found the time. And that is, air rifles. So, spring-loaded air rifles. I own a WR7. And it's just one of my customers got me into it. It's kind of fun. Miniature sniping. Basically, they're just crazy accurate. It's an Olympic sport, that type of thing. I own it, but I never find the time to do it, But what I do like about it is that I'm away from technology. And so the only real hobby I have is board game night once a month. That's the real hobby because it gets me away from the computers, right? Otherwise, I'm always surrounded by a computer and I'm always working. So, but I've always been that way in my life of, I get into it and then I'm just into it 150%. That's the problem. So, I got into fish. Guess what? It's got to be my livelihood. It's got to be my hobby. It's got to be all my things. And before that, it was Magic the Gathering and WoW and other games. And yeah, they were businesses where I sold stuff. And so that's just the way I am. And which I think it's kind of a good thing because I find hobbies for me are an escape from my daily life, right? And if I don't really have many other hobbies, it's probably because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So I'm lucky for that. Yeah, that's what I would say there. And I mean, YouTube is probably a good hobby for me as well. But, it's business too. I'm not going to say if you could do anything in the world, what would you do? Edit another video? Well, probably not. If I could do anything right now, I would probably be camping. Because I like to go out in the wilderness where my cell phone doesn't work. It's stressful, but also at the same time, I can't work. And if you put me in a scenario where I can't work, that's where I tend to be at my ease. So, what about a chaka catfish? The chaka? They're kind of like a super-sized version of the Banjo Catfish. They also are known as a Pac-Man catfish. I've had them before. It's one of those things, I've had them once. Yeah, pretty boring. Maybe I wouldn't keep them again. They look super cool. But they're in that weird oddball category. Yeah. Oh, I want to answer that. I treated my cories with erythromycin and general cure because one was very lethargic and not eating, had a broken barbel, and had turned very dark. He's acting fine now, but is very dark. Should I worry? Well, I mean, I wouldn't say worry. You should definitely be proactive and keep an eye on it, right? Keep looking at it. I'm assuming it's in a group of cories of its own type, So if it's I have no idea what type it is. But let's say it's a panda cory. It's with 5 or 6 other panda cories. I'd want to hopefully see it start eating. But just because something's dark, it could be, think of it another way. We see dark and we go, hey, that's what happens before stuff dies. But if we look at people, you can say, hey, look, that person's scared. That's what happens before people die. They get scared and then, they get hit by a car, right? But maybe then you just have someone in the room that is naturally more scared than others. Maybe they just don't like being in a room full of people. That doesn't mean they're necessarily going to die either. So you could have that your fish, it just doesn't feel comfortable yet. And maybe in a month or a week or something like that, it finally goes, all right, this is home. I can walk around in my pajamas and it'll be okay. That's what you're hoping it will do. And so yeah, keep an eye on it, but don't assume just because it's dark that, it's the end, the absolute worst. kind of go, okay, well, it's doing better. And I take it one step at a time of like, okay, we're doing better. Let's give it some time, see if it does even better. So, all right. Corey, play competitive chess. So here's the problem. You would never see me on YouTube and I would shut the store down. Like if I actually got competitive, it's all or nothing. In fact, the guy that built my store, like physically built it all, is very, well, I am not a very good chess player, but from everyone I've ever talked to that knows him that is good at chess, they say he's really good at chess. So he used to be, president of a chess club, and, that doesn't mean anything, right? Like, if I'm the president of the chess club of this studio, that doesn't mean anything. But, I haven't watched him do it, but I've talked to the people that have seen him do it, where he'll show up at another club, beat everyone in the room, and then they go, who are you again? That type of thing. So I could learn from him, but I don't want, that's the thing is, I want to take on a hobby that relieves me from being competitive. And so that's a hard thing because I get competitive about everything. It doesn't matter what it is. You could, if my wife, wants to get me to fold towels, all she has to do is ask me, like, I bet I can fold more towels than you can. And then all of a sudden I'm folding towels as fast as possible. That's just who I am. And so for some reason, I got to turn everything. Like if I was painting this wall, my wife was painting that wall, in my mind, I have to do it faster and I got to do it better. Like it's just not even, everything's got to be a contest. And so getting into something that's competitive, I know that's a can of worms of like, oh geez, I better try and stay out of that. So yeah. All right. Let's see. So down below, it's like, go checkmate a bunch of people, win a bunch of money. Yeah. I enjoy, I'm enjoying the solitaire game of running a business and that type of thing. So that's where I'm making my money currently. Recommend a moderately priced filter for the 75-gallon tank behind me. A lot of options there. I'm on the fence on whether it comes to an undergravel filter, which turns out for 75-gallon, the premium variety, not cheap, by the way. I did buy one just because it's in the thinking about it. I think sponge filters are probably the best dollar to like filtration ratio. I like a hang-on back. I know they get a lot of hate, but an AquaClear hang-on back, I still like them. What I'll be looking at in here, and I think everyone needs to be doing this when it comes to filtration, is what needs do you need to make? I want it to be as quiet as possible. I'm actually worried that even bubbles from a sponge filter are going to be a little louder than I want, but I do want air in the tank. So then canister filters are pretty quiet. The problem is they also cost a decent amount of money, and if I'm trying to do these tanks on a budget so I can kind of teach and do that kind of stuff, when I go buy a $300 filter, like, well, that's not really doing it cheap either. So I don't know which direction I'm going. I feel like the correct recommendation for this for you, Sean, would be sponge filters or a decent quality hang-on back that you like to use. All right, I'm going to go till 6:30 my time. That's another 12 minutes. I'm getting thirsty. I'm still drinking this water, but... So Brian says competitive fish keeping. Oh, yeah. Fish keeping is super competitive. When it comes... I mean, you see it all the time in Facebook groups and stuff, right? Like, check it out. I have 37 AquaClear 110s on my tank. Oh, I've got 10 FX6s. I just bred. I did this. It's competitive, I would be lying if I told you that I wasn't sad to see like a couple local people breed dwarf Claroplecos before me, and then Ted Judy, that type of thing. Mostly because I'm just going, oh man, I could have done that if I dedicated more time. I coulda. I'm competitive. I turn everything into, not that I'm going to like beat myself up over it, but I just, going, dang it, I could have done that. Oh, well, I guess I'm doing all these other things too. But yeah, I think a lot of people are competitive. In fact, if you actually want to be competitive, you can do bull shows. You can compete, whether it's your libears at the libear conventions, cichlids at the cichlid conventions, bettas at the betta conventions, all those. You can be raising them up and doing all that kind of stuff. And, yeah, so there you go. Are hatchet fish supposed to be hard to care for? I feel discouraged to buy them, but I don't like making excuses for myself. I usually buy them at a PetSmart, not sure if they have bad stock. The trick to them is lots of floating food. They only really want to eat off the surface, and if they're not providing that, they might be coming in a little weak for you. But I wouldn't say they're hard to take care of, but definitely have a well-sealed up aquarium, and hopefully if you're starting off with good stock, it should be fairly easy. The gamer says, go play CSGO. I haven't played Counter-Strike since 1.5 when they changed the hitboxes. Yes, I know what hitboxes are. Yes, it's, don't get me wrong. When you start changing, like when you've gamed that hard for that long and they change the hitbox for the AK-47 and stuff like that, that changes the whole game. You're basically learning a whole different game. Like, yeah, they're changing minor things, but all of a sudden, when you jump and you've crouched to make your body smaller for the last 5 years playing the game, and now that doesn't make your body smaller and it changes the way you shoot, that's an entirely different game. So they, when they made that jump from 1.5 to 1.6, changed the game entirely. I stopped playing it then. So, yeah. This question was asked earlier, and I didn't answer it because we were talking about oddballs, but now I can answer it. Corey, if I had $1 billion and built a freshwater tank, and the size had to be 15,000 gallons, what would you keep? When I buy a house, I will build a tank like that for sure. Koi indoors? So I don't think you need that much money. There was a guy that had, I think it was 40,000 gallons in his house. But it comes down to dimensions. And honestly, so I'm only 33, but I feel like every year older I get, the more in tune with myself I get. And if you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have come up with some cool fish that I can't keep right now in that 15,000 gallons. Now I would tell you I would keep a Maboo puffer and guppies probably. Why? Because I would love it. I would love it. I just know I would love it because every year I continue to love guppies. I continue to love my Maboo puffer. And I know that me knowing they were in 15,000 gallons of water would make me even happier. And so, yeah, do I want to play with maybe sturgeon sometime outside in a pond or something like that? Yeah, but I think if it was going to be in my house and I was going to interact with it daily, if this whole wall, I would just want to see guppies moving and just be like, oh my god, it's so cool. Because I would think it would be that cool. And the next guy down the road might go, ha, that'd be so boring. And yeah, to each their own. But when you build something like that, build it for you, not for what you think other people will think are cool. And that's, are you building your own personal aquarium or are you building a public aquarium? When you buy fish for other people, it's a public aquarium. When it's just for you, great. Load that thing up with blood parrots or glowfish or Oscars or angelfish or whatever your thing is. African cichlids. It doesn't matter. Whatever you are in love with. If you only get one aquarium, fill it with what you love and you genuinely love. I find a lot of people don't like to keep stuff because they're like, well, everyone keeps platies. Everyone keeps that. Everyone keeps it because they think it's cool. You should just keep what you like. Off my soapbox. Phew. All right. Would I ever keep ropefish for my Maboo puffer? I wouldn't. And I got to look up that other name. Fundulus grandimissus. I can't pronounce that. I'm bad. I feel like I want to say Fundulopanchex is what I want to say, but so it is a giant killifish. I probably wouldn't. Well, I won't say wouldn't. Because I don't have experience with that fish, I don't know the temperament, and I would not jeopardize my Maboo puffer until I was very in tune with their temperament. So I wouldn't start out, and if I kept them for a while and I was like, oh man, I love these fish, and they would not be detrimental to my Maboo puffer anyway, I would consider it, yes. Let's see. Corey sounds like that annoying big brother that always wants to win. It's true. My wife sometimes will ask me, like, can't you just have fun? And I won't say if I'm being truthful. I try to be truthful all the time. I tell her, I can't have fun unless I'm playing to win. Like, that's always a fault for me. If you so for instance in chess, not that I'm good, I'm horrible. Well, not horrible, but, I've never been professionally trained or anything like that, but I have a very hard time if my 5-year-old niece asks me, can you teach me how to play chess? not playing to win. Like, I could do it, right? But let's say Bob from Steamfod Aquatics says, Corey, let's learn to play chess. You better believe I would be trying to beat him every time. I don't care. Like, because I would consider, like, okay, you should have equal intelligence, and the only way I get better is if I play to win, so I'm going to play to win every time. Even if we found out that I beat him every time, I would play to win. Because I don't like letting people win, because that's not a win. And even if he beat me every time, that's even better. You have the best chance of learning when you're playing a game against someone who's better than you. So I love that situation. A lot of people get discouraged. They don't like losing. But when you're losing, you have the most to learn. I don't care if it's gaming or business or something like that. There's a lot to learn while you're losing. You're learning everything not to do, and you can be watching what you think you should be doing. You might should be doing? That's a string of words. But anyway, about 4 minutes left. Let me grab some more questions. Can mystery snails be bred? I think it was like in a 70-gallon tank. Yes, I think. It scrolled on me. Sorry about that. Is Melifix shrimp and Coolie Loach safe? I don't know. I don't really use Melifix myself. But Corey, you sell it. Yeah, because everyone else likes to use it. I haven't used it nearly as much as my other products. My other products, like Icex, that type of thing, it is safe for both those fish. Melifix, I strongly suspect it'll be just fine, but because I haven't tested it with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different types of fish, I don't like to say that. So, how long can I keep rainbows in a 26-gallon? If they're like bigger bodied rainbows, maybe 6 or 8 months. If they're pseudomogils or threadfins or something like that, probably their whole life. Would I ever keep a gar? I know natives are illegal where you live, but maybe tropical gar? Even those are illegal here. But I don't think I would ever. Well, I won't say never, but currently I have no interest in keeping gars, I guess, is my thoughts. Let's see. What are my thoughts about DIY backgrounds made from foam covered by cement for 90-gallon tank? I think they're pretty cool if you have the patience and you want a project, because it doesn't save you any money. I've bought all the ingredients to do it a couple of times. I always get lazy mid-project, partially because I'm bad at being an artist, and I'm never happy with what I make. But you got to be patient when it comes to leaching out all the minerals and stuff. Even though you're going to cap that cement, you're still going to have high pH. You got to keep doing the water changes and let it soak and do all those things. But I do think they're pretty cool, yeah. And I always like it. I'm a big fan of building something, right? So even though, like, I don't know, even though I go buy a rad table, if I build that table, I'm super proud of it because I'm like, I made that table. Unless it was like ultra crappy. But if it's like halfway usable, I love it 10 times more than something I pay good money for. So same thing. If you build that background and you like it, you will love it going, I made that. You see that right there? When someone asks you, like, where'd you get that background? And you get to perk up and you get to go, I made it. What? That's a good feeling, right? Everyone loves that feeling. So, yeah, I'm just in general, I like DIYing stuff because I like that feeling of like, I did that. Yeah. Let's see, a couple more minutes. Pipefish, commonly sold as largemouth pipefish. I've never seen them on the wholesale list of largemouth pipefish, so I'm not sure. Mine are always broken down by scientific name where I buy them from. Is that a 75-gallon behind me? Yes, the one that came from Petco. What light can I use to carpet dwarf hairgrass, and is it fine with Oscars? Probably not going to work out with Oscars. Long term, those Oscars will dig a bit, whether they're digging breeding pits or something like that. And, you know, with that much tank that you need for those Oscars, you need quite a bit of light. So while everything could technically be done, I feel like you're barking up the wrong tree in that line of logic. Let's see. Corey, you should get into RC crawlers. The only competitive part is a crawler competition. You can also build your own crawler. I'm intrigued by that, but I feel like that's a bigger money pit than fish is. Anyone that I know that's been into like RC cars in general, they're like, check it out. This little motor was $800. And then like a week later, you're like, check it out. My car exploded into 1 billion pieces because X happened. I mean, not really, but you know, that's just what it is. So let's see here. So Pontus says, just small pointer with the new studio. Try warmer light. You look really pale. Love the show. Yes, that's why I started out with, there's a lot of stuff going on. Like right here. So different light bulbs I'm trying. Even more different. This is a softer color. This is going to be more of a 2700 Kelvin. The ones that are currently in are 6000 Kelvin. Then you've got, you know, let's you know, I always, because I'm competitive, I always want to be like, oh, trust me, I am trying. So then you've got, like, people are always like, why don't you buy lighting kits? Oh, you mean like all the lighting kits I have sitting here and down there and out in the garage and the 5 other ones I'm probably going to buy? Like, don't get me wrong, it's going to take a while to get some of the stuff dialed in. It will get dialed in. It's just, the problem is, I don't have all day to sit here and go, let me change this light, let me record it, let me watch it, let me ask what people think, let me do this, let me do that. And it's going to be one of those things that, like, to get to this point, it's already been hours. So yeah, I'll work on it again probably next Sunday for another couple hours with more lighting setups. And then, so you might be like, well, why not just light yourself up a little bit more here? So, like, let me open this umbrella here. I was testing this literally 4 minutes before we went live. So let me open this umbrella. Oh, I just took the umbrella off. Oh no. Let me open it up. So now I'm making all kinds of noise and you guys are just going, this guy's not even talking about fish anymore. But you turn that on and what do you see in the background? Instantly right there, an umbrella. So even though it lights me up more, we can see that, like, oh, look at that. Half my face on this side is lit up now, which would give me more even temperature. Boom, straight in the back. So there's a lot of angles, and really I'm not going to dial in my lighting until these, because these are going to cast off light too. So I got to get the constants, which I know these will always be on. Then I can focus on some of these other lights to play with. And, you know, because there's a lot of stuff we could test. Let me test one more thing. Like, what if I just turn the overhead light off? You know, so that changes things even right there. So there's so many lights I could be playing with. And it will get dialed in. Yep, I can adjust white balances and stuff like that. There's a million things. But, so for instance, I spent most of the week, and I ended up reverting all of it, but running my mic through different, basically, audio software so that I could change it and amplify and change things and modify and get background noise out and doing things. And, yeah, so don't get me wrong. It's not from a lack of putting time against it, but I will figure it out. And people always go, well, I can just tell you how to do it. It's like, well, I want to learn it. I am enjoying learning it. So anyway, you know, if you don't like Smurf Corey, listen to me on the podcast, because then you don't know I'm a Smurf at all. What if it turns out I actually am this blue and you guys haven't seen me for real? Like, what if I'm color correcting it on when I'm using my other camera and I'm actually this blue? Like Big Steen can tell you, I'm blue. Anyway, I'm going to answer this last question here, and then I'm calling it. Because it says, at Aquariumcoop, I know you don't like to get off topic, which it just was, but I got a little ammonia emergency and put bay leaves in my tank. Is that bad? Bay leaves? I don't know. Like, I mean, the ammonia emergency, I'd be changing water. So the answer is change water. Yeah. So much better with the light off. Yeah, I mean, maybe. It all depends. Like, you change the lighting and you change one thing here, and then you change another thing over here. And that's the thing, is it takes so many things of, like, changing that, you know, you can spend hours and then you come back to, like, yeah, I don't know if it's technically better. All I know is I know when it's like, hey, that's right, and then it's not right. And right now it's not right. I know that. But I don't know, you know, I got to play with it some more to get it right. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. I was spending all week playing with lighting, and it won't be any better next week, but eventually I'll get it. And, yeah. See, Flynn can attest, you know. Even ask Flynn. He went to my store, and I'm blue, and we had to shoot it on my camera because I didn't want people to know that I wasn't blue, or that I was blue. Is that what I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's it. That's all I got. And, yeah, time to eat something. I think my wife's not home. I'll starve till she gets home. So Lucas is live streaming next. That's kind of the running joke if you don't know it. By the way, we throw Lucas of LR Brett's under the bus all the time. Anytime anyone streams, they just say he's streaming next. I don't know if he actually. Let me see. That might be someone telling me actually is. Oh, okay. Wasn't, but anyway, thanks for hanging out, guys. What do I got? Yeah, order the food. You know, get that coupon code, 20% off sponge filters or not 20%, 10% off sponge filters and air stones. And I'm gonna try and expand the offerings on Amazon, that kind of stuff. We're working on getting it so it can ship worldwide, or at least much more. But it takes time, right? Like, I've filled out the paperwork, but you know, they basically got to do background checks and make sure I'm not shipping bad stuff around the world. So it takes a while, but working on it, doing what I can. And yeah, let me get the right page, close this thing down. We'll see you next Sunday. In the comments, put in suggestions on what you want to see the stream. Maybe I'll pick yours. You know, don't send me an email because I always feel obligated. I have to reply to that email, but put it in the comments. I'll read it, and you know, we'll go from there. I think, anyway. I chose this earlier this morning. I couldn't pick. That's the hardest part for me, is picking. What am I going to talk about? I could talk about anything. But what do I want to talk about today? So yeah. Anyway, have a good night, everyone. Ooh, I do want to be in the Blue Man group. I could do that. Although I got no art skills, so it won't work out. But anyway, we'll talk to you later.